Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Elder Scrolls Spotlight, a podcast about roleplay and role-playing inside the Elder Scrolls Online MMO-RPG. My name is Mikey, and I'll be your friendly neighborhood commentator for the evening. Since the first episode, we've been interviewing roleplayers from all corners of the community, from the EU and NA servers, from different aspects of RP such as Dunmer, Argonian, Nord, and Altmer-oriented roleplay. Heck, I've even interviewed a very nice artist from Germany, whose work many of you know and love. But this time for this episode, I've decided to take a different approach. You see, I'm pretty sure we can all agree that lore is important to us roleplayers. We use it as context in which we define our characters' interactions. So with that being said, I thought it prudent to interview some lore buffs. The first on the docket, Zorkonov from the Imperial Knowledge channel. You may have seen some of his videos, such as his take on the Imperials versus Stormcloaks conflict, and most recently his long lecture-style episode on the history of the Elder Scrolls, from creation of the Orbis to the Dawn era. It is my hope to have a discussion with him on his knowledge of the lore, what he loves about Elder Scrolls, and just to get to know the guy. I owe him many apologies, so without further ado, let's just jump into it. Zorkonov, welcome to the show. God help you. How you doing?
I'm fine. I'm happy to be here. How about you?
I'm in some sort of way.
All right.
We started off about 30 minutes, but we started off 30 minutes late. It's been a hell of a time trying to get this all fixed up. But you know what? We're here now, and that's what
we're here. Don't worry about it.
Let's just jump right into it, shall we?
All right.
So, where are you from? How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I am from the Netherlands, and I am currently studying in university, and I'm making YouTube videos. So that.
Great YouTube videos. Can't say enough nice things about them. Which part of the Netherlands, if you don't mind me asking?
We call it the province of South Holland, but it's not completely in the south. So it's not Amsterdam. I'm not buried in weed, so don't worry about it.
That's cool. The reason I ask is because you're not the first person I've talked to that's from the Netherlands. In fact, I used to have a few friends from the Netherlands. I know a fella from Rotterdam. He works he kind of lives in the countryside a little bit, I believe, around that area. He's a little upper class, which you wouldn't expect, but you know, he's a nice guy.
Well, I'm from around that same area. I mean, basically the entire countryside around Rotterdam is basically all of the province of South Holland. So except for the urban areas, that's basically the entire province, because you can basically all describe it as around Rotterdam, since it's basically the central city of the province. So we're generally from the same chunk of land, but probably there's another 1 million people living here, so a very small chance that I'll know him.
I also know a person from, I'm probably going to say this wrong because I can't really remember the name, but I think there's a city called Groningen.
Oh, Groningen.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a city completely in the north, and yeah, I don't know anyone from there. I've never even been there, if I'm correct. No, I've never been there. Only once on a train station. But.
And then I know a nice lady. She lives in, I think, Alkmaar, or however you say that name as well.
Alkmaar.
Yes. I mean, but it's, you know, it's just one of those things where it really is just a small world when I think about it. And
I've now, I think, met people from about 70% of all countries on the world. So that's, yeah,
it's a small world.
The power of the internet, indeed. And also the power of Elder Scrolls lore. I mean, I wouldn't even have guessed that so many people were interested in it. But yeah, then again, you have people like Fudge Muppet, which have even more subscribers.
Fudge Muppet, that's... He's they're funny dudes. They're funny dudes. I like what they do. I think that, but they may have started with Scrolls, but they were smart. They started to diversify. I don't know if you know this or not, but they started covering the Witcher lore as well.
I must say that I haven't really checked with them for some time. I mean, I have some email contact with them from now and then. They know of me and I know of them, but other than that, I don't really watch their videos, so I can't say too much that I know what it's all about. I mean, we've got some minor conversations about people copying. People were accusing them that they copied one of my videos, and after that, some people accused me of copying one of their videos. And basically, that was everything we talked about, together with some lore things. So
that sounds like a bucket of worms. That
we're on good understanding. I don't know the English term about it, but
good terms.
We're on good terms. But we don't know too much about each other. Plus, they're in a completely different league than I am. So,
right. But at the same time, I mean, I would imagine there are some parallel tracks there. I mean, there's only so much. Granted, the Elder Scrolls lore and its universe. There's so many things to talk about. No doubt, you guys would talk about similar subjects at some point in time.
That's what we basically talked about, because in both occasions we came to the conclusion that we hadn't even seen each other's videos on the subjects, but because the lore ultimately forces you to do the same subjects, you will overlap. So it's also why I tend to give my videos a little bit of a spin with mostly my own theories after the normal segment, or my own form of presentation. For example, I tend to really focus on realistic scenarios. Like, how do I describe this? Like, some people think, well, the Thalmor should win because of a cool metaphysical reason, or a cool reason for this would be cool, that would be cool. But I really try to look at things like, okay, what would be logical if you look at the treaties that are there, if you look at the politics we have, at the army sizes, etc. So that way I try to give my own take. But even though if you give your own take on events, you still overlap in terms of content because the lore is limited. So you will have overlaps. I mean, I've had these same accusations with people like Sarik Zakaron, the ESO lore dude. I don't know exactly what his name was. It's like the biggest ESO guides and things, who also makes lore videos. And Camel Works, and I mean, we all get those same accusations, and I've been in email contact with nearly all of them, or Discord contact, and we always come to the conclusion that, well, it's just coincidence most of the times. And if it isn't coincidence, I mean, it could have been a coincidence because the lore is limited and you're bound to talk about the same subjects anyway. So I don't usually give much attention to people saying, hey, you copied this or you copied that. If they accuse me, I tend to contact the YouTuber it's about to say, hey, somebody is accusing me. Do you think that I did it as well? And then just explain the process through which I made my script, so he can see that I didn't copy anything of him, because I don't want any drama with anyone, because my channel is about lore and not about grabbing attention with drama like he copied my videos, etc.
It seems like we live in an age of drama where you can just find it anywhere over the smallest things. There is something that you said that I really liked, where you tried to put your own spin on things, but at the same time, you also look at it from logic, or from a logical standpoint. And I felt that your video on the, I think the Second Great War prediction, I think you made.
Which one? I did two. I did one the one with the map, or the one with the troop analysis.
I think it was the one with the map. It was nearly like around 25 minutes long, I think. I can't.
Yeah, that one. I'm not a fan of that one.
Really? I thought it was very well done.
I completely screwed up the naming of that video, because somebody basically told me, all right, make a scenario in which the Altmeri Dominion could win the Second Great War. That's what somebody said to me. So I did that. I did exactly that. But then I named the video Second Great War Speculation. And that's just not true, because now people think that I think that that's how the Second Great War is going to go. But I really don't think that. That was just a scenario through which I think the Altmeri Dominion could have won, or at least, depending on how you define winning, could have had the upper hand in the conflict. I don't really think that that is how the war is going to go, because, yeah, that was just an issue where I forgot to, where I basically just screwed up the name of the video, because somebody suggested it to me. Hey, name it Speculation. But after uploading it, I really realized this is not at all a speculation that I think is what's going to happen. So that was a bit of a screw up, and it gave me more of a headache than it gave me satisfaction to upload that in the end. But
I wouldn't have figured. I thought it was very, chock full of information. But what would you have named it differently if you could? Then could you not go back and rename it, or no?
Well, I can go back and rename it. The problem is that the headache, as I call it, only came after it had like 10,000 views, because then people really started criticizing the theory, and then I went back, and because you have to realize that is literally one of my highest production value videos, because I worked on that video for literally months, and I think that I edited it in several weeks, and at one point I just really couldn't handle it anymore, and I just decided to finish the thing and put it online. And then after it got like 10,000 views and people really started getting into it, and then I had to, because whenever people give really big comments of criticism, I tend to respond to it if it's about the video itself. So whenever people say, I don't think this or this will happen because of this and this and this, then I tend to respond to it if I didn't do it before. Because if people ask the same question 3 times or something, then I'll only respond to the first one, so people can look up my answer, because I'm not gonna, you can think that's maybe a bit egoistic or anything. I know people think that, but
I mean, you can only respond to the same question so many times before you can just be like, oh, I said this already.
Yeah, I mean, the question, what do you think will happen in Elder Scrolls 6? I literally, I think about 100 people now, because I don't know why that question is so interesting, but to get back to what I was saying before, I would have named it something along the lines of how the Altmerry Dominion could win a second Great War, and then something like between brackets possible scenario. But the problem is that after so many views, if you change the name, it could be my own superstition, but it seems like that if you change names, the YouTube algorithm is going to fuck with you. That's why I always leave titles the way they are, unless I really made a big mistake. Like in one title, I made a big mistake because I uploaded that video like several weeks after I made it, and then I completely butchered the title. I don't really know which one. It's my own superstition that the YouTube algorithm doesn't really like it if you change content after you already uploaded it to the public. So I tend to just leave my videos alone. Like, I know there's a spelling error in one of my titles, but I won't adjust it because I'm just too superstitious. The YouTube algorithm will completely fuck me.
I guess I don't want to say crazy, but with how bizarre YouTube is and the way that they're going about, trying to keep their platform as well kept as best they can, and especially, I think we're still feeling the aftermath of the Adpocalypse 1 and 2. It wouldn't surprise me that the algorithm would do something like that, because it's a very weird algorithm. Hell, some of the notifications that you get from your regular content creators, you don't get them. Like, you hit the bell icon for that particular reason, and it doesn't show up. And
well, the reason that the title changed, why I don't have any proof of it happening, but it's something that I personally think, because it's that superstition came after a couple of weird coincidences. Probably there were coincidences, but I think that a system like that is in place to make sure that if a video gets a lot of views, that you can't just change the title to, for example, if you made a tutorial on, I don't know, about eating something or something, I don't know, if you made a tutorial and it gets like 1 million views, that you can just change the title to Hail Hitler or something, because then that video would have like 1 million views. And I think that's the idea behind it, that the YouTube algorithm just bans that video from that point on. That's what I think, but I'm not sure if it's true or anything. It's just my own superstition, as I said before, but it would be a logical measure for YouTube to implement. So it's why I really leave my titles alone and my thumbnails as well.
I don't think it's superstition. I think it's more like an educated guess, because you've been doing this for how long now? And you've seen
a little over 2 years.
Right. And your first video was The Great War Explained, if I remember correctly. Because you're always looking to do better with your work, you actually updated that later on, and I remember seeing that video too. And there's a stark difference between the two, which is really interesting to see when you look back on it then. Now I love doing that. But you've been doing this for 2 years now. Obviously, you're going to notice, you have to keep an eye on what YouTube is doing and what beyond what YouTube is doing, I would imagine. So if it's within your instinct, man, go for it. Believe it. That's what I think. And if there's proof to the otherwise, it's not like you're going to deny it. You know what I mean? If there is proof that YouTube's algorithm doesn't work like that, then you're like, okay, at least that's how I feel.
Then I can finally change that one thumbnail. I'm really looking for it now because I have this one thumbnail, and I believe it was on it was on Maven Blackbriar, where the thumbnail is just completely wrong because it shows a picture of Maven Blackbriar, but the title of the thumbnail literally says Gaiden Shinji. But I didn't change it just because I was afraid that the YouTube algorithm would take revenge on me. So I literally took that video out of all my playlists just because I didn't want anyone to see the fact that I made such a big mistake, because I used to have a completely different kind of thumbnail, because now I have a thumbnail with a black bar, but I used to have a very weird, very unprofessional thumbnail. But I changed all of my videos. I changed the thumbnail from. So also from my old videos, but apparently that didn't go well on the Maven Blackbriar video, where I just completely forgot to adjust the title on the thumbnail in Photoshop. So that's been kind of embarrassing to see that every time when I log into YouTube.
Well, for what it's worth, I don't think anybody noticed.
No, they didn't. They really didn't. I took it out of all my playlists. It's never gonna be recommended to anyone. But if you look the video up now, it's gonna say Gaiden Shinji on the thumbnail, but it shows a picture of, I believe, the Godfather with Maven Blackbriar's head badly photoshopped over it. I'm seeing if I can find it, but even I can't seem to find it at this point.
Let's see. Hang on a second. Maven Blackbriar.
Imperial Knowledge.
Imperial.
Oh yeah, I found it.
Yeah, I got it at the top of my
Yeah, I mean it literally says Gaiden Shinji on a Maven Blackbriar video, but nobody has seemed to notice either. So I don't even know if I should even make thumbnails at this point.
I think
if people aren't looking at them,
it's one of those. It's just that one small thing out of many. But since we're talking about it on here, I'm sure that it'll probably get a few more clicks and be pointed out.
Well, if after the upload of this video, I'm gonna get like 7 comments under it, like, why is the thumbnail wrong? Then I know it's your fault.
I don't take responsibility.
You should.
I should.
I mean, some of my other thumbnails also have mistakes. Like I don't really remember which one it is, but it got pointed out to me that one of my thumbnails had a really grave spelling error on it, but I also did not adjust it because I am just so damn superstitious, and I know that if you do like one thing wrong, and I've done a lot of things wrong, trust me, because there's a reason why I have 20,000 subscribers, but I get an average of like 1.8 thousand views. I've done a lot of things wrong because the YouTube algorithm has lost traction of me a lot of times and then picked up again for whatever reason. Now I'm once again on a low end, but I don't tend to do it on purpose. And if adjusting your thumbnail or title is one of those ways how the algorithm loses track of you, then I'm not gonna do it.
It's completely understandable from my point of view. But at the same time, while the Elder Scrolls lore community is very intensive, I don't think the regular run-of-the-mill Skyrim player would go onto YouTube to look up, who is General Tullius's, or General Tullius's past, or I don't know.
Well, that's very, very, very interesting that you bring it up, because those kind of things. You're right that those kind of things like the General Tullius backstory and how his past is, etc. Well, that's not really interesting to people. What's interesting to people is videos, and you can see that in my views because it simply has things like like the first Ekaviri invasion, my last video that I made. I mean, it has 1.8 thousand views, and that's my regular following. But those are not the videos that get views. Also, like the Creation and the Dawn Era, also 1.8 thousand. But things like the Great War, whenever I talk something Great War, more people will generally view it. And that's because the Elder Scrolls lore community is relatively small. I mean, it's a pretty big community, but it's relatively small. While if you look at how my channel started with the Great War video, I literally made that video. So a friend of mine who was a diehard Stormcloak supporter. I mean, I'm okay with Stormcloak supporters, but I'm not okay with him being a Stormcloak supporter, because he supported them because he thought that the Empire and the Thalmor allied with each other in the Great War to fight against Skyrim, and that the Great War meant that the Empire took over Skyrim in the Great War. He literally thought that. He was like that much of a lore noob. Wow. He didn't even bother listening to dialogue. So for those kind of people that absolutely don't know what the Great War is, but are like, huh, I want to know, that's why you make some videos, for example, like the Great War, because it explains a topic that is, to get that you have to read a book in game, and you have to talk to people in game to get all the nitbits from the dialogue. And instead of doing that, because the normal Skyrim player is not going to do that, they're not going to grind dialogue everywhere around the map just to get a full picture of the Great War. Instead of doing that, you can watch one video that I made, and that way more people will know about the general concept of the Great War. But I agree that like the nitpicky parts of the lore, such as the first Akaviri invasion and biodiversity, which I did for some reason,
which I liked.
It's actually I literally promised it to one guy in the comments, and he just kept bugging me about it, that I promised to make this video, so I did it.
He's a loyal supporter.
Yeah, he is. That's why I ended up doing it. I mean, if he hadn't commented me like, you promised to do this, I wouldn't have done it. But I mean, those kind of videos, they are not for people who just play Skyrim casually. But I do have some videos like on the Great War, or like on the Mythic Dawn, for example. Right. Those kind of videos, whenever you encounter the Mythic Dawn in Oblivion, you would want to know, hey, what are their motivations, without having to read all kind of books. So you Google Mythic Dawn and you see my video, and then it gets explained to you in like a 10-minute video, with all the necessary backstory on it.
And if we're looking at something, say, going back to the biodiversity and ecosystems of Tamriel, right? I mean, that is very nitpicky, and at the same time, I don't think it's something that not the casual, but just the regular run-of-the-mill Elder Scrolls player would just think about, like, oh yeah, Skyrim's up in the north, so obviously it's going to be cold, or Cyrodiil's in the center of things, so I guess it would be kind of temperate or something of that nature, where people don't realize, like, oh yeah, Morrowind, it's basically this big mushroom kingdom sort of place that's having a giant volcano over there. It's a very esoteric subject, but at the same time, that's kind of the whole landscape of Tamriel, isn't it? It's very esoteric.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Where was I going with all this?
I have no idea. I trail off a lot when I talk, so I'm sorry for that.
No, it's fine. This is one great tangent, and the first of many, I hope, that we find ourselves on.
I'm just scrolling through my videos now, and I really did some weird shit. Like sex and procreation on Tamriel. Why the fuck did I do that? Now that I'm looking back on it, and it is all the physics in the Elder Scrolls universe. So why would anyone want to watch that?
Well, I watch those videos, so you're insulting me there.
No, I mean, I really enjoyed researching those. Those are like the really obscure things. Those are the most fun to do, because I really get to look into, for example, the physics in the Elder Scrolls universe. I really had to use my old high school physics skills together with a guy that I still knew from high school who's now studying physics. He and I just went into the engine and we did some shit with formulas, and I didn't even understand what he did at one point. I mean, what I did in that video was bare bones. We went much further. That guy was on a path to like calculate the entire diameter and the entire mass of the planet Nirn.
Jesus.
So I still want to do a video on that sometime, but he still has his notes at home, I hope, because I really have to finish that. But wow. Those kind of things, whenever I made them and I just see that after a couple of months, I really think, damn, I'm such a dork. Why would anyone want to watch this? I mean, I want to watch it, but why would anyone? Or
I don't know. I think that's the mark of a successful content creator. If you're making successful content that you want to watch, and at the same time, if other people are enjoying it, then by all means, keep doing what you're doing.
But also genetics of Tamriel, why?
Well, it does play a part, though. I mean, looking at those dang half-breed mongrel Bretons, right? They didn't come to be Bretons. That was just one instance of, you know the stories.
Yeah.
Generations and generations of breeding between disgusting aliens and humans. But but a video like that, a video like sex, relationships, and procreation, that, as weird as it sounds, I would imagine is something that I think a role player would look up, because the idea of races and mixed races, especially trying to choose which character you're going to be playing as within the game, and then role playing as, I think that's very important.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, those were actually, together with some others, one of the videos where I got the most comments from actual role players who said, well, thank you for helping me with roleplay, because I was wondering this or that, and you answered it in the video. So I guess for those kind of for those kind of videos, I think that could be useful for the role, for example, the role playing community, indeed, because I keep forgetting that this is actually a role playing thing. So shameless plug, watch the video on sex and procreation in the Elder Scrolls universe. It's a good watch, and I make a lot of weird jokes.
Plus, it's 21 minutes long, so you have something to chew on, and it has 7.3K views, so you know it's good.
Well, not really. Well, my content is absolute shit, man. Don't deny it.
No, stop throwing yourself under the bus. It's good. It's good. I like it, and that's what matters. My opinion matters.
Sure. If you like it, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, I absolutely love making my videos, but I realize that my production value is just. I mean, if you look at people like Straight Up Irish, Avarti, or just even some of the people that I work with that are way smaller than me. For example, the HB Productions channel, or the Kukai. I never know what to call him, if I have to call him Kukai or Ku, but those kind of people, they have really high production value. I've been talking with Ku about a video he's about to release. Well, about to release, it'll take a couple of more days, but he's literally put in like 20 hours of editing. And I mean, my videos never get 20 hours of editing. Sometimes they do, if it's like a really, really, really comprehensive video. I'm currently working on one, but most of my videos are, I mean, the research takes a long time, but the editing is just throw a couple of pictures in. I mean, most people don't even look at the video itself; they just listen. So,
and yeah, that's what I do, but it's still good to me. And I think that's prevalent towards a certain motif within lore content. So, with all due respect to Straight Up Irish, Kukai, E15, HB Productions, you guys are all wonderful gentlemen. With respect to them, I think it comes down to not necessarily having all the bells and whistles and how great the editing is. I mean, yes, that is one of the major components, but at the same time, there's also substance over.
True, but I mean, I can put out a video once or sometimes twice a week. I tend to put it twice a week, but lately I've been really busy with other projects, which take a lot of my time up. But I mean, whenever I'm going to watch a video from Kukai or from the HB Production channel, those guys literally make videos that are just like a joy to watch. My videos are just like you put them on, you listen to it, and you get your lore. Those guys literally, they put in all the effort. They have the well-researched lore. They have the really great visuals, because my PC can't even handle recording Skyrim in a steady frame rate. They, fortunately for them, have. I mean, their videos, they are just really a joy to watch and joy to listen to. And that's why I am also subscribed to them. They're one of the few Elder Scrolls YouTubers that I personally watch. So
sure. And the thing is that, they're not driven by getting all these views. You always get, I'm throwing a lot of YouTubers under the bus here, but they're not sellouts, right? Like if you go to, I don't mean to offend you, HB. I'm just saying, if you go to HB Productions, right? Those guys, they have what, 1,000 subscribers, give or take, right? But at the same time,
I believe now 900. Not sure.
Okay, but they still have Elder Scrolls lore video memes. They just, and they made that just for the fun of it, and they're having fun with it, and that's something that I admire.
They're really having fun with it, and that's indeed that's what I admire also about them, because I don't know, I've come to a situation where I've uploaded, I think, 3 meme videos on Imperial Knowledge. They're really scarce on my channel, simply because I think that I can better dedicate my time to making lore videos, since I enjoy that more. But once in a while, I enjoy making something like a meme video. And you can't imagine how many people have come to me and said, hey, I want to start my own YouTube channel. What do I have to do? And then I'm like, I don't know. I got a lot of luck. Literally my entire life on YouTube is that I've got an insane amount of luck to have been discovered. But I always say to them, just do what you want, because once I got discovered, people stuck with me for some reason. And that's because I managed to really upload all my shit. I mean, I upload once or twice a week. And you have to be able to keep doing that, even if you're temporary out of Elder Scrolls, because right now I'm not playing any Elder Scrolls game. I'm playing completely other games. But even then, you need to be with such a mindset where you're still interested in it, even though you're not playing it.
You don't want to burn yourself out, I would imagine.
Yeah, indeed. If for example, there's one guy, and I'm not gonna name his channel because I'm not a dick, but he came to me and he said, "Hey, I want to do Elder Scrolls lore, and can you give me some advice, and can you give me a plug so I have viewers?" And I was like, "Sure, I can give you some advice, but I can't really plug you in a video without having seen it. I will keep watching your channel." And after that, we didn't really have any contact, but literally after 1 month, the guy completely stopped. He had some views, but he didn't have enough views according to himself, because he wanted at least 100 views per video. And I was like, that's not how you start a channel. I mean, I started with 4 views per video, I think, at one point. And I mean, that's not how you do it. If you only do it for not because you actually like what you make, you're not going to be able to keep it up.
You won't, and you end up burning yourself out. And to your point, like I don't mind. I don't know. I can see if I can picture a few people going like, he's not playing Elder Scrolls, even though he makes Elder Scrolls content. What's wrong with you? You know, it's like,
don't worry. I play the games to do my research in it, but I mean, I don't play it to enjoy it at the moment. I have work play and I have regular play. I have work play, which is basically I go do, for example, if I were to do a video about Whiterun, I would basically go to Whiterun, talk to all the NPCs, read all the books, basically summon dialogue via console commands, and basically flesh out the entire dialogue trees that there are. And that's basically work play, because it's work. I'm noting things down on a notepad.
you're right. And my point is that, you know, some people could be up in arms because they're like, oh, he's not really playing Elder Scrolls. He just plays it for work. I can't believe this. And he calls himself an Elder Scrolls fan. And
I have a combined 2,000 hours on Skyrim. And I think that on my, I have Morrowind and Oblivion, I have on discs. People really come to me and say, you don't have many hours on Morrowind or Oblivion on Steam, and still you make videos. Yeah, I have them on discs before I bought them on Steam, and I think that I have thousands of hours in them both. But I mean, currently there isn't anything new in the Elder Scrolls scene. I mean, sure, I could play Elder Scrolls Online, but I'm just not that much of an MMO guy. So
sure, and each to their own on that one. It's interesting to me, though, that you still have them on disc, where it seems that we're moving towards more and more digitizing of things. Like,
I have an entire cabinet full of still on disc games. I try to buy everything that I can on disc, and also the games that I buy for console also on disc, because I really dislike the current digital age of gaming, because I really like having a physical game. It really feels like you own it. Because, for example, I don't know if you remember the DSi, which was basically Nintendo's handheld after the DS and before the 3DS.
Sure.
It had an eShop. And that's now offline. So if you bought anything on that, you will never be able to play it again, unless you downloaded it. I have an old DSi here around, which still has a shitload of DSiware on it from back in the day. But I mean, if I hadn't downloaded it, it would be gone now. I would never be able to play it again. And I'm terrified that would happen with my PC, for example. I mean, or with any of my other consoles. I mean, if I ever, for example, I still have an old Wii lying around. if I had bought things on the Wii eShop, I mean that's also gonna close down in 2019, they said. But if I, for example, want my kids later to play Mario Galaxy, then they can still, because I have it on a disc.
Right.
So that I just want to physically own my games. That's the point that I was trying to make. Sorry that I dragged it out so long.
No, it's fine, and I think that there are many that will agree with you that they want to physically own their games. It's like what Stan Lee said, rest in peace Stan Lee, where they asked him, what do you think of reading comic books online? He said, I think that's great, but comic books are like boobs, and I'd like to hold one in my hand. So I think that kind of works with video games, right? Video games are great, but I'd rather hold the disc in my hand. And this is going to sound really weird, but I like going through the video game manual booklets that you get from.
Yeah, me too. I really, really, really hate that not a lot of companies are doing that anymore. I mean, for example, if you looked at the Wii age with the Wii, I remember when was that again? I think now about 10 years ago or something. Time goes fast.
Yeah.
But when I had like Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess on the Wii, it came with a really nice booklet that was really thick booklet, which had all the items in it, all the moves with all beautiful artworks. And you don't really see that anymore. I mean, some indie publishers are really doing it with their physical releases too, and then the physical releases are a bit more expensive, but then they literally praise you for buying the physical release. But even Bethesda, which always had maps with their games, I mean, they're not really doing that anymore. With the recent re-releases of Skyrim, you're not getting a map anymore, if I'm correct. So I'm really sad to see that go. All the paperwork that you always got with games.
Yeah, it's a dying trend, perhaps. Who knows? Makes me a little sad. Thanks for that. You just brought a damper on the podcast. How dare you? The most recent example I can think of that in terms of video game manuals was I bought Red Dead Redemption 2 when that came out. And, oh boy, that game. Love that game. It's a great game. I highly recommend it to anybody.
It seems to be really great. Yes. I am in so much pain right now. All my friends at university all play it, but I only have a PC and a Nintendo Switch. I'm literally dying from the inside because I can't play Red Dead Redemption. I'm hating myself right now.
Oh no. I'm sure at some point you can get a PS4 maybe. And you're probably going to hate me for suggesting this, but they might release it on Steam at some point in the future. Maybe not now.
It's rumored that it'll be in 2019. So I'm gonna play it when it comes out on PC, if it comes out. But I mean, I'm just really sad because I all my friends are playing it right now, and I'm really like, shut up! I want to play it as well, but I can't.
Did you play the first Red Dead Redemption?
Not yet, unfortunately, but I heard it was really good, and I have it on my current wish list to play. So
okay. I don't know if they'd ever release that on Steam. I highly doubt it. But oh man,
no, I believe they don't. But I can borrow a console from somebody to play it because my old PS3 is dead.
That's the thing about old consoles too, is that they die.
I try to really be careful with them nowadays, but that thing just died because I dropped it. So it's not. It was the software.
Oh boy!
Don't worry about it. But I am kind of clumsy sometimes with my consoles.
I think you're in good company. I'm clumsy myself, except I always drop my phone. I got to stop doing that. Eventually, I ended up had to get one of those really, really big hard cases just to make sure that it was still good. And even then, it died. I'm without a phone right now. It's been rough.
Oh damn! I currently have a phone, and it's also full of cracks on the backside. I've like a phone with a glass backside. I don't know which Nazi thought of that, but I used to have a phone with a plastic backside, and I dropped it, and I was like, oh, don't worry, it's okay. And I picked it up, and I was like, oh, it's full of cracks now. Please give me a phone with a plastic backside. Sorry, I really keep talking through you. I'm sorry. I'll be silent.
It's fine. We're just talking. That's how it is.
All right.
Once we go through the editing process, if anything, it won't be that terrible. We'll I'll be able to space out this pacing and stuff. And if anything, I'll just mute myself at certain times because I sound like an idiot.
Don't worry
I hate
about
listening to my voice. I really do.
I think everybody has that. I mean, in my own, I don't like listening to my own. If I have the choice, if I, for example, have to study up on a subject, I often always first look if like Avarti or any of the other guys have anything on the subject before I go to my own video, because I really hate listening to my own voice.
Interesting. Yeah, it's I think you're definitely right there. It's something that a lot of people deal with.
Yeah,
Especially when you hear yourself, you're just like, "Is that what I sound like?"
my own voice in my head doesn't really sound like the way I sound, and I really think that my own voice is really like, it sounds really. It seems to sound really sarcastic whenever I say something. It's not that bad in English, I believe, but whenever I'm talking Dutch, people always think that I'm being sarcastic while I'm not. So apparently, my voice is it really makes things come out sarcastic, and that's not.
I can sort of see that. I think there were a few times where I felt a little bit of a sarcastic vibe, but
Oh no, sorry, I don't tend to be sorry.
no, I know you're not. I'm just saying, like, I could see how some people can think that, but I think the more they talk to you, the more they might realize, like, you don't mean to sound that way. It's just that's what it is.
It's unfortunately how it is. Yes.
It's a curse. It's a curse.
Don't worry about it. I'm fine.
Moving on, then we've derailed quite a bit. In fact, we skipped over several questions.
I just completely steamrolled you. Sorry.
It's fine. Let's bring it back though. Let's bring it towards since we're on Elder Scrolls, and since we've also veered into YouTube just a little bit. Let's talk about your first Elder Scrolls game. Which one was it? How'd you get into it?
It was Morrowind, but it was quite late because other people were playing Oblivion, but my PC couldn't handle Oblivion, so I played Morrowind on my old laptop. But I must say that at first I didn't really like it too much, and I still don't really like the gameplay. But I must say that Morrowind has an amazing story, and even then, I mean, my English wasn't that good yet. It's not even that good now if I'm speaking. But I mean, right now I can really appreciate the story. Back then I couldn't really appreciate it all that much. Yeah, I think my first one was Morrowind, if I'm not mistaken. Well, you could also say Oblivion, since I played it at someone else's house. And then only after that I played Morrowind. And yeah, I think you can say either Morrowind or Oblivion.
Okay, I'm gonna make you choose here, but between Morrowind and Oblivion, which one do you like?
I like Skyrim the best.
I meant between Morrowind or Oblivion. We'll talk about Skyrim later. Of course, that's your favorite. Skyrim's not your favorite. You're not an Elder fan. That's just how it is.
Well, not really. A lot of people will kill you right now.
I know. That's why I said it, because I wanted to piss them off.
I must say that I like all the Elder Scrolls games equally, but I like the world of Oblivion more, but I like the story of Morrowind more, and I can't really choose between the two. I had a blast with both of the games, and I like Skyrim for its gameplay more. That's why I don't really have a favorite between them. I can tell you which Elder Scrolls games I hate the most, because that's Arena and Daggerfall, not because they're bad games, because I just really can't get them to work on my PC properly. So whenever I have to play them, I play them with a big headache. But it has nothing to do with the games. I really like them all equally.
Going over to Morrowind, I would say is the weirdest of all the Elder Scrolls game. In Oblivion, it was very Lord of the Rings. It was very generic in terms of fantasy, except, I mean, I guess if you ventured into the Oblivion Gates, you get a very different environment that's starkly different. But just running around in Cyrodiil or being around Lake Ramare or where have you, it was kind of generic, I think, in that sense.
Yeah, they basically aimed for the Lord of the Rings fans at that point. It was like Lord of the Rings came out, and it was a really as a movie, because the books have been around for way longer, of course. But I mean, the Lord of the Rings movies came out, they got a really big following, and then Bethesda was like, hey, we'll release this trailer, and then maybe we'll capture those fans if we have it more like a more medieval instead of the like really weird stuff that you had in Morrowind. I mean, Morrowind had some weird stuff, and Oblivion was way more like you said, way more classic fantasy instead of like weird ass fantasy. And then Skyrim brought back the weirdness a bit.
I'd say Skyrim is a bit more distinct.
Yeah, I mean, Skyrim isn't as distinct as Morrowind was, but it's more distinct than Oblivion. But I really like the world of Oblivion the best. I really can't deny that, because I really enjoyed the medieval. I basically just really enjoy being in the heart of the Empire, and people already know that I'm an Empire fanboy, so just leave me be on that.
Hey, I'm an Empire fanboy too. It's okay. You're in good company, my friend. You're in good company.
You realize, as you're saying this, you're basically losing viewers, because now both the Morrowind fanboys already quit watching this video when you said Skyrim was the best, and now the Stormcloaks are you're losing Stormcloaks as well. We'll basically end up with only the two of us watching this video if we'll continue like this.
Hey, you know what? I don't mind that, because you know what? This is a great conversation. I'll be looking back and listening to this great conversation, so that's fine. If anything, though, going towards Oblivion, how do I say this? I like Oblivion for one reason only, and that's because you see, this is after I thought about it. This is where you see the apocalypse happen, if that makes sense. So once Mehrunes Dagon comes in, everything goes to shit. And I didn't really think about this until a few years later. Like, oh yeah, that's when you really see the fall of the Empire. Is that when Mehrunes Dagon, and the Mythic Dawn. Once the veil is torn, that's when everything goes to shit, which adds much more weight to Skyrim, because Skyrim, I would argue, is much more of a post-apocalyptic game, right? There's the Civil War going on. The central government, which was the law of the land, is in pieces.
Well, it's post-apocalyptic. Sorry, let me think about this. It's a really interesting thought, naming Skyrim post-apocalyptic, but it is post-apocalyptic if you see the Oblivion Crisis as a apocalypse that basically, as an apocalypse, something that really erased the society from before. But I would argue that it was an apocalypse, but I don't really know if you can call Skyrim post-apocalyptic in the sense of the word, in the sense of how the word is used in the world of today. I mean, it's after the apocalypse, so yes, you could call it post-apocalyptic, but it's 200 years almost. It's more than 200 years after the apocalypse. So I don't really know I don't really think it was your intention anyway to class it with post-apocalyptic games. I just finished my trail of thought. Sorry.
They're none that way, but in the Elder Scrolls sense, I would perhaps it could be looked at that way, because, as you said, it's 200 years since that's happened, and what have they really got to show for it? How has the land recovered from that? I don't think it really has.
Well, I think it's really depending on how you from what perspective you're looking at. If you're looking from a Septim perspective, so if, for example, Uriel Septim were to return from the dead, let it please happen, but no. I mean, if he were to return from the dead, he would say, yeah, everything's gone to shit, and the Empire is not that big anymore, and everything has gone to shit. But if you look from a perspective of an Argonian, or from the perspective of a high elf, maybe it depends on what the mood in Valenwood and elsewhere is. But if you look at the perspective from other races, you can say that they would say, well, look, we have a lot to show for. We're finally independent and we're doing pretty well. And we're doing better now than we were doing before the apocalypse. Sure, the Empire itself is less big than it was, but even the Empire, at least before the Great War, recovered pretty well, I would say, but it's more of a human empire now, because at least before the Great War, it was more of a human empire than it was a Tamrielic empire anymore. But I mean, if we were to call it the human empire, the Altmeri Dominion, and just Black Mars, and fuck all knows what's happening in Morrowind, I mean, it really depends from which perspective you look, whether we have recovered or not. Because, as I said before, the High Elf will say, we have recovered really great. Meanwhile, the Imperial would say, times were better in the Septim days. So it really depends on how you classify it.
That is a great point that you make, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. From an Imperial standpoint, yeah, perhaps, everything has gone to shit. From the Argonian standpoint, I think is a great point too, because they're having a great time, right? Black Marsh
Yeah.
has always been untouched, I think, throughout history, right? I mean, I guess you had the Blackwater War, but that kind of ended really crappy for the Imperials, but
I mean, nobody except for the Argonians is. If I'm saying this right, but in the center of Black Marsh, like the deepest swamps, I mean, the lore is that no empire has ever gained actual foothold there, and that even during the Septim days, Black Marsh as an imperial province was basically just the big cities, and the rest of the Argonian tribes are relatively independent.
right.
I believe that's what the lore was from the top of my head, but don't pinpoint me on it. I might be wrong.
I always looked at it as a satellite state. So I think that could be synonymous with what you're saying. Um, but they're reclaiming their own lands that were up to the north of them, right? They're booting out the Dunmer, and that's after. Um, was it the Red Year? The Red Year is when
After the Red Year, yeah, when everything was going to shit in Morrowind, when they were really weak after the Red Year, then the Argonians invaded.
exactly, and they're doing good, and we also have to give props to the Argonians because to my knowledge, they're the only ones that didn't really have any problems with the Oblivion Crisis. In fact, I think I read somewhere like when the Oblivion Crisis occurred, they pushed the Oblivion forces back, and then the Oblivion forces were like, we're not even gonna go there. Let's not go there. We'll just leave them alone. Let's deal with the other guys. They're much more easier. And that makes me laugh.
The Argonians did very well, but
Can't fuck with them, dude. Don't fuck with the Argonian. Speaking of Burgonians, let's talk about races as a whole. Since we've gone from since we kind of ventured into that subject, what is your favorite Elder Scrolls race? If you have, besides Imperial, I think that's it.
I was thinking, do you really have to ask at this point? But I think that my favorite race in terms of lore might, other than Imperial, might just be the High Elves. And people won't like that one bit because people really hate the High Elves in my comments. But I really just like how the High Elves have always been basically on their own, on their island, and only after the second era, after the plane melt in ESO, they really started meddling in Tamriel's affairs, and they've really made for some very interesting cases in the lore. For example, the Great War. It was kind of their fault. I mean, but I'm not gonna blame them fully because the Empire did some shitty things too during the building of the Empire by Tiber Septim. But I mean, they have really, Black Marsh hasn't really challenged. They've always been on their own, even though they can defeat the Imperials. They were all like, why? But the High Elves really have made for some really interesting lore, and that's why plus I really like their building style. But that's just.
I've had the fortune of talking to an Altmer player, changed my mind about the High Elves from several things because for me it's Imperials, and then after that it's Nords. I'm both diehards. I'm very diehard for those two.
I'm not saying I agree with the High Elves. Just say that they created some of the more interesting lore situations that I personally really like to study. For example, the Great War. I mean, if there weren't any High Elves, there wouldn't have been a Great War. And while the Great War wasn't good for the Empire, it's really one of the subjects I enjoy to study most. But that's just why I see High Elves as the second most interesting races. Probably a better.
I agree with you. What I mean to say is that I do agree that the High Elves are definitely interesting. To me, there's this piece of lore that's come out with ESO called the Path of Alaxon, which is basically this idea, the Altmer pursuit of perfection, right? Because they're always trying to do things perfectly. And to see that sort of enacted within the ESO lore, I don't know if how well Elder Scrolls 6 will incorporate that, or any of what ESO does, we'll see. But to see that incorporated is infinitely fascinating. Because, and I think I could be wrong, I think I read somewhere that essentially what the Altmer want is that they want to go back to that sort of perfect state, back to when they were all what's the word?
Etara.
Etara, thank you. Yes, back to when they were all Etara.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the more interesting points about them, because you can try to change my mind on it, but I don't think you'll be able to convince me. But I don't really think the Argonians are interesting. I know that a lot of people think that they are, and I personally think that their current rulers, the Ansehil, are the I never say that right. The Ansehil,
Anzalil.
something like that. That they are very interesting, and I really like some parts of their history. But as a race, they have basically just been conceived to serve the Hist, and they don't really have a purpose in the same sense the Altmer and the Imperials have their purposes and have their goals. And that's why they are less interesting to me. It doesn't really have to mean that they have to be less interesting to other people. I mean,
of course. And I think I'm following your train of thought there. I think the reason they appeal to a lot of folks is because they're like the Dunmer to a certain extent, or like the land of Morrowind. It's just that they're just that alien. That sort of, they're just that disconnected from the rest of the land, which that disconnect of incongruity between, Cyrodiil and what we see in Cyrodiil versus what we see in Black Marsh, and just the total bizarreness of it all is, I think, attractive, which is probably why some folks find Argonians interesting.
Yeah, it is.
But
and it's also one of the reasons why I personally think that Elder Scrolls 6 or even Elder Scrolls 7, if that ever comes out, will never be set in Black Marsh, and maybe not be set in Elsewhere. Elsewhere might just be possible, but because Black Marsh is such a alien environment, and Elder Scrolls has really been focusing on the casuals as of late. I mean, with Skyrim, you can say about it what you want. Skyrim is a great game, but it isn't as appealing to hardcore players as Morrowind, for example, was.
Sure.
And because of that, they will probably not do Black Marsh or Akavir for that point, because they try to appeal to an audience that's more for classical fantasy. So, for example, the Somerset Isles in the lore, they had like houses of butterfly wings or something like that, if I remember it correctly.
Or and then entire towers just made of glass.
Exactly, and then in ESO we got what we have now in chapter expansion, and you can really see how they opted away from that classical perspective in the lore and just went with a more casual interpretation of high elves in general. And a lot of people didn't like that, but I can see why they would make, for example, the cities like they made them, with like more castle styled and more like classical fantasy high elf building styles, because they want to appeal to another audience.
I think I agree with you. I think rather than saying casual, I think the better word to use is grounded. The reason being is that if they went way out of the water, if they were trying to, all due respect to the hardcore fans, but if they were trying to appease to the hardcore fans, then yes, of course, they'd be losing a lot of revenue. At the same time, it'd be very hard to introduce some of the more newer players or the more newer folks to the franchise, which is why I've always thought that Elder Scrolls 6 might happen in Hammerfell.
Probably going to be Hammerfell or High Rock. Probably.
I kind of hope they don't go High Rock, because High Rock is also very medieval. Done that before, I don't know. I'd rather not. I'd rather not tread down that route again. You know what I mean?
I agree with you to some point, but I also think that if they did Hammerfell and High Rock together, which it seems to be a possibility, then I think that could be interesting, because they are two completely different environments. But over the two, I definitely also prefer Hammerfell, if they have to do just one province.
Not only that, but again, correct me if I'm wrong, because you know more about this than I do.
Probably not.
No, believe me, you do. As the current events of Skyrim, the Aldmeri Dominion, they're still struggling with trying to take Hammerfell. Hammerfell is still strong enough to put up a very good fight. Is that correct to say?
It really depends on your definition of very good fight. Hammerfell managed to fight them to a standstill along I believe it was along the coastline, or they at least managed to push them back towards the line Sentinel Tenath had, something like that. but we don't know how far they got. But then they fought 5 years long in like a sort of trench war, really not. Neither of the sides really gained any territory until the Altmeri Dominion was like, let's just give this up. This is no use. But those troops in Hammerfell that were fighting were largely Hammerfell troops plus Imperial veterans that were left behind during the Great War. And even with those Imperial veterans who were left behind, when the Imperial armies was retreating to Cyrodiil for the Battle of the Red Ring, even with those troops, they couldn't push them out. And the main army, there were no reinforcements for the Altmeri Dominion at the point, because the Altmeri Dominion had gambled everything on Cyrodiil. So if the Altmeri Dominion were to attack Hammerfell now, I don't really think they would stand a chance, because they wouldn't have the help from the Empire at all, like they had in the First War. And the Altmeri Dominion would not have a war with the Empire. It would gamble more resources on than on Hammerfell. If they would put all their resources towards Hammerfell, I'm sure Hammerfell would fall within weeks. At this point, at least. I mean, we can't be sure how Tesla would write something like that. I mean, they've done more illogical things in the past. But, sorry, I'm looking at my map of Tamriel on the wall right now, and I'm trying to... Well, I'm looking at Hammerfell now, and I'm thinking, if they would do a good elastic defense through the desert with specialized troops that are trained for it, I think they might just be able to at least hold eastern Hammerfell. But I think that if the Altmeri Dominion were to focus an attack on the coastline would fall within weeks, because if the Dominion has recovered fully, which we don't quite know if they have, but if they have, and they wouldn't go to war with the Empire, would only go to war with an independent Hammerfell. And if independent Hammerfell is not allied with the Empire, which I personally think it is, because they don't really have a choice, if Hammerfell were to stand alone against the full Dominion might, they wouldn't really stand a chance. I think that's my interpretation, but don't pinpoint me on it. Bethesda might write it.
No, I think there's some merit there. I would disagree with you only slightly in that the Red Guards are renowned sailors. To me, the Red Guards have always been, and again, my Red Guard lore is probably lacking a little bit, but the Red Guards are known for their sword singers and their sailors. So I think that their navy would probably be able to give the Altmeri Dominion a good fight. But I think they might lose. The reason I say they might lose is because if the Altmeri Dominion makes use of its Malmer, they're sea elves, and sea elves are amazing sailors.
The sea elves aren't part of the Dominion.
Oh, they're not?
No, they're not. No, they're the enemies of the Somerset Isles. You shouldn't... sorry if I came off really passive-aggressively.
No. Teach me. Okay, so they're not part of the Altmeri Dominion.
There's been one last invasion by Pianone, like not a few years ago, but like a couple hundred years ago, and since then nobody has really heard from the Sea Elves or what they have been doing on their island. But they have been the enemies of the High Elves mostly for like thousands of years. So they are not part of the Dominion unless perhaps there has been some sort of a treaty between Pianone and the Somerset Isles we don't know about. But as far as we know, I think if the Sea Elves played a role in the Great War at all, we would have known about it. And if there were allies, that we would have known about it, because then it would have probably been in one of the Imperial records about how things went down ever since the Oblivion Crisis. I mean, something like the a foreign continent allying with a hostile power to the Empire. That must have been recorded if something like that happened. I'm sorry. I didn't mean aggressive, but it's.
Don't apologize. Don't apologize. It's all good. It's all good. But okay, and now if I'm looking at, see now here's a interesting scenario. Probably has no lore basis whatsoever. But looking at that map, right? If you got the forces of Hammerfell, the forces of Islandwood, and the forces of Piandonia or Piandone, however you say that name, all to unite, triple, not triple. What's the word? It's not a pincer movement. It's I don't know. They'd be attacked on 3 sides. I don't think Eleanor would survive.
Oh no, it really wouldn't. Eleanor, well, perhaps they would if they had strong enough magic to defend it, but yeah, I don't really think that they would be able to survive that. I could be wrong, and there would probably, if there's any lore masters watching, they will probably completely correct me that the High Elves have this and this magic, and that they will be able to do this and this and this. But I can't summon that kind of knowledge from my head. Sorry.
You know what would also be interesting, actually, now that I think about it? It would be interesting to see the High Elf perspective on Somerset Isles as the Second Great War happens. Hear me out on this, right? So let's say that whoever unites for the Second Great War on the side of man starts to push back the High Elves, right? And we look at their version of their events from the High Elf perspective. So we get to see like the fall of Somerset through a High Elf's eyes. I think that'd probably make for a good story. I think that'd be interesting to see.
That would be amazing. I also hate the fact that we don't have any like soldier journals that we can find. We can find some veterans from the Great War in Skyrim, but we don't meet any veterans from the other side, except for that one priest from Falkreath who regrets all the killing from the Altmeri side. And that really humanizes the Altmeri troops to see that, well, they are not all that indoctrinated. I mean, I can't recall his exact dialogue. I mean, we don't have many perspectives from the other side, and I would really have enjoyed a perspective from the other side.
Plus, it's not as alien as the others could be. When I say the others, I mean the other land masses, I think. In fact, if anything, they could show Somerset as being a beautiful island slowly being turned to just ash and devastation as the war rages on. And they had the technology to do that, I think. But anyway, moving right along towards the next question.
Oh my.
Sorry, what's wrong?
I quickly Googled the priest from Falkreath, and he apparently has a journal, and I really want to read that after this podcast. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. So moving right along then. We've talked about Elder Scrolls extensively. Obviously, you've played other video games as well. So what is it about the Elder Scrolls, besides the lore, that stands out to you as opposed to the other video games? What makes you come back to Elder Scrolls every single time?
Well, it's really hard to explain. You see, when I played Morrowind and Oblivion, I mean, you can on one hand say that Morrowind was my first game, but you could also say that Skyrim was my first Elder Scrolls game. It depends on how you look at it, because I have a lot of hours on all the Elder Scrolls games, but Morrowind and Oblivion, the first time I played them, I had only like maybe 50 hours combined on them. I really started replaying them after I played Skyrim, because I completely sort of forgot about Elder Scrolls after playing Oblivion, and it's really something that I know a lot of people will hate me for, and they probably will, but I really sort of forgot about Elder Scrolls for a while, and I played this game at my friend's house. I wasn't really that aware of the gaming community at that point, because I was busy with other things like school, etc. And the main games that I played at the time, we're talking about 2012 now, are basically stupid games on my phone, because my PC couldn't handle any serious games, and I was playing some smaller games with some friends, but nothing too serious. And then I was at a friend's house, and we played this game where he was I didn't know it was Skyrim, but he was playing Skyrim. He was an Imperial, and he was just basically in a complete open world. And just the way how Skyrim made the open world really left an impression on me, which drove me back into Elder Scrolls. I started playing Skyrim, and after I finished Skyrim, I started playing Oblivion and Morrowind, and then the hours racked up pretty fast. But I don't really remember what the question was you asked me.
I asked what stands out, what makes Elder Scrolls.
Sorry. Yeah, the world, just because Oblivion, for example, left an impression on me of an awesome world with like the Imperial City standing as a big, with the White Gold Tower standing as a big pillar to the sky in the middle, and just the medieval cities. I really like that. And then Skyrim, I remember I was playing the game with my friend, and I didn't realize it was Elder Scrolls. He didn't even tell me the name, and I don't even know how that was possible that I didn't see that it was Elder Scrolls. But we didn't encounter any Khajiit or Argonians in the short time we were playing it. So it could have been any fantasy game, essentially. But we were going from Whiterun to Rorikstead, and then we went to Rorikstead, and we walked westwards along the path. We were only walking on the path at that point. And then there's a sort of hill. When you walk westward out of Rorikstead, it's literally it's the Elder Scrolls moment I remember best. Then you stand on a sort of hill, and you're looking over the big Whiterun plains that are behind it. And then I was like, wait a minute. I don't have to stay on this path. I can literally go there. I see that stone there. I can go there. And I basically walked to that place. And I was like, oh my god, this is the best open world I've ever seen. I hadn't played that much open world games. And I don't even understand why I play Elder Scrolls. It's not really generally within the games that I like. But I really like Elder Scrolls for some reason. I really like the story behind the Elder Scrolls. I really like the worlds of the Elder Scrolls. And even if there wasn't any gameplay, I probably still play it just to traverse the worlds and to learn about the lore. I mean, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes sense, and I followed you on all completely. I think that with every game, and I think this is what something Bethesda as a company does well when it comes to their video game approach. They've always been an open world oriented developer, right? Okay, so that's one of the things that, as a developer, what I think Bethesda does well is that they make you traverse the world. That's their whole open world mindset. So every time, so say if we look at Fallout 4 or Fallout 3, you're essentially observing what has happened to the U.S. or different parts of the U.S. through a survivor's eyes, right? If you're looking at I guess Skyrim, I guess Oblivion, yeah, even Morrowind, you're essentially the chosen one. You're going with the chosen one trope. Last Dragonborn, Hero of Kavach, and the Nerevarine. They're all exploring the different provinces of Tamriel, and they're. I'm gonna piss people off by saying this, but in terms of the actual storytelling, they're not exactly known for their cutscenes. Obviously, voice acting can definitely use some work, but at the same time, that's not why you're playing a Bethesda game. You're playing a Bethesda game to explore. I think we can all agree on that. So I definitely know where you're coming from when you say that's the case. And I'd go a step further, and I'd say that the medieval fantasy of it all is your cup of tea, as opposed to, again, I'm just making an inference. I'm making a guess, is that, you'd probably like of medieval fantasy more so than, I don't know, something that's more steampunk oriented or something of that nature, something urban fantasy or Star Wars or something of that nature. You know what I mean? So, with that being said, we move on to, and I don't know how much of an opinion you have on it, but I'm going to go ahead and ask the question anyway. Your thoughts on Elder Scrolls Online? I know you haven't played it, but obviously you've done some research.
I have played it a lot. But it's just not really. Let me say it like this. I can objectively see that it's a great game. It's well made. it's really enjoyable, but it's just not really my cup of tea. As I said before, I am really surprised that I even like Elder Scrolls, but that's mostly because I really like the universe itself. I also really like the gameplay from Skyrim, Oblivion, Morrowind, also two-part, in some sense, Arena, Daggerfall, just because it's so sandbox, so open world, and that's something I really like, to just live within that world. Elder Scrolls Online is an MMO, and I am not that much of an MMO guy. It's just unfortunate because so if Elder Scrolls Online had been more sandboxy and been more like a regular Elder Scrolls game, I would have really liked it. And I really like the world because when I play Elder Scrolls Online, and I do play Elder Scrolls Online once in a while, but I'm usually on offline because I don't want people to think I'm actually playing, because I'm not playing anymore. I don't really like dungeons, etc. I'm usually just traversing the world, just looking at the world, making screenshots for videos, etc. And that's something I like about Elder Scrolls Online: the world, how well the world is made. And I can also see objectively, as I said before, that it's a well-made and in some sense balanced game. I've heard some really bad things about balancing in Elder Scrolls Online from people that play regularly, so I'm not going to speak too much about it, but it's a great game, and I prefer it to any other MMO because it's Elder Scrolls, but I'm just not that much of an MMO person. So that's why I generally don't play it a lot, but it's a good game.
Sure, sure. As far as Elder Scrolls Online is concerned, it's kind of like ideally, it's the pipe dream as well, right? I mean, for the Elder Scrolls fans, it's like, okay, I can finally play with some friends. You know, you roll up a Dunmer character, I roll up a Dunmer character, you roll up a Nord character, I roll up a Nord character, and then, you know, you're traversing the world together. I can totally see people enjoying that. But when it first came out, boy, whew, was that a shit show? Not that I know.
People expected Skyrim Online. I was one of the few. The period that I played it was in the year after its release in 2014, I believe it was. Then I played it with some friends. That's where the majority of my hours in the game come from. And I really remember that one of my friends was really disappointed because he didn't research into what the game actually was. He just saw Elder Scrolls Online, so he expected Skyrim Online. And I remember how bummed he was when it turned out that it wasn't Skyrim Online. So if you're expecting that, it's a shit show, yeah.
We've delved into a little bit of what you do. Let's go back to it. And I owe you an apology for this question, because I accidentally said your channel was Imperial Library instead of Imperial Knowledge. I looked back and I was like, no, that's not what I meant to say. Shit. But it's obvious that you've done a lot of work. You devote a lot of time to your channel, Imperial Knowledge. And when you go to the About section, one of the things that I really like about it is that essentially the channel is like your research notes.
Oh boy, that's the description from a long time ago, but I haven't altered it because it still holds up. But somebody in my university recently discovered my channel, and he went to the About part, and he was like, "Oh my god, there's so many spelling errors in this." But I can't be bothered to change it. There's also like these. I really wrote this when I had like 5 subscribers, and just to troll people, I basically put some 1998 PC specs under it, and people keep asking me if that's my real PC, but it really isn't. I just literally copied that from some online webpage out of 1998. What a good gaming PC for that time was. So I was like, yeah. Sorry, go on with your question.
No. It's. But like I said, though, that's what I admire about your channel. It's not, you're not. Yes, you are explaining lore to a lot of people that would like the lore to explain to them, but at the same time, you're doing it and saying like, this is what I've discovered. This is my own conclusions that I've arrived at. This is what I think about certain subjects. And I admire that, because although you try to be objective, at the same time, you're sharing your takeaway from those videos. So as you said before, like, you put your own theories into your videos, and sorry, I can't really remember any theories that come to mind at the moment, because this channel is just something for you to continue learning. The line that I really like the most is, if you see a mistake, everyone is allowed to correct me. And that's something I really like, because if people are open to understanding that, yeah, I can fuck up every now and again, you're doing that to essentially learn more. Now, granted, of course, somebody think you made a mistake, but then they can be wrong, or what they think is right turns out to be wrong, or something of that nature. But that's besides the point. What I'm getting at here is that a lot of work goes into what you do. Talk to me about that workflow. You mentioned you had a team a little bit, I think you said.
Well, I've recently made a video explaining why I don't really do any all the topics that I get requested. That's simply because I get way too many requests. I have a list that's now like 5 times longer, a list of requests that's almost 5 times longer than the amount of channel after 2 years. So I won't be able to do all of them. But the way I usually go about it is I go to my list and I check how much a request has been done. If a request that I don't really like has like a really big amount of requests, then I'll still delve into it, because that's just a part of fan service. But usually I pick a topic, and you can really see that in my channel, because I don't have videos like genetics in the Elder Scrolls universe, for example. Those don't get any requests. I mean, they get one request and nothing else, because who thinks of that? But when I see it, and I'm really motivated, because when I see something like genetics in the Elder Scrolls universe as a request, then I'm thinking, could there be anything about it? And then I'm genuinely motivated to check it out. So just like the thing of democracy on Tamriel, or the sex and relationships and procreation, or the biodiversity things, those are really the things. They get only one request, and I'll still pick them because they're really interesting to me. And I try to find a balance between amount of requests versus if it's interesting to me, and also just do some random things like a video on, let's see, what's a good example? Yeah, the mysterious lesser known islands of Nirn. Those didn't have much requests, and it wasn't too interesting to me since I already knew everything, but that's also just fan service to do something else for a change and just satisfy some people's requests. But at this point, I really can't do all the requests, or because I just simply get too many. Sometimes I give some of my requests that I think are interesting and I would want another YouTuber to do. I actually request them under someone else's video. For example, I requested a video. He hasn't done it yet, but he said that he would look into it, to Kukai, because I was like, well, that isn't a video I could make interesting, but that's a video that his style of video making could make very interesting. So I sometimes do that if I really don't know what to do with a request. But that's how I generally pick a topic. When I have a topic, for example, something on biodiversity, there's almost nothing on it online. But for example, if I go talk about Yokuda, for example, I first check out what does the 2 wikis have to say about it, and then I'm not really looking at what the wiki has to say about it. I'm going to the references, so the sources under the page, and I'll read those references to see it in its completion, because say what you want about a wiki, but I know some people that are writing on it, and I know that a lot of people that are writing on the wiki are disagreeing with each other. For example, I know that there are people who are definitely pro-Imperial and definitely pro-Stormcloak who all write for the wiki. And some sources are so vague that they are up for interpretation. And I sometimes think that some people on the wiki, I'm not accusing anyone personally because I don't know if it happens, but I've seen one article once where it was a really biased article towards the Empire. And while it would be my conclusions as well, I could see how biased it was. I mean, I still use the wikis to sometimes quickly verify something. For example, if I...
Now, just to break in here, the wikis being UESP?
UESP and just the Skyrim wiki, both of them.
Oh, Skyrim wiki, gotcha.
Oh, no, not the Skyrim wiki, just the general Elder Scrolls wiki, sorry.
Gotcha, okay. Just to clarify for people that are listening that, yeah, those are...
I mean, UESP is usually a bit more objective, but has less text on the pages. While the wiki... I basically say UASP, and the wiki, with the wiki I mean the Elder Scrolls wiki, has more on the pages but has less professional staff. And I know that I'm insulting a lot of people, and I'm really appreciative of the work that they do, because They are educating. I mean, their wiki articles are educating the people on lore that don't want to watch videos or don't want to watch or just don't want to read the books themselves, and that's good. Don't mistake me on that. I'm not hating on the wiki here, but what I know is that some facts in the Elder Scrolls universe are up for interpretation, and I don't when I read an article, I don't want to be influenced by the interpretation of the writer, whether it's biased or unbiased. I want to have my own interpretation, and that's why I tend to not use wiki articles for my videos, but rather try to look at their sources. And when I've looked at their sources, I'll usually go to Imperial Library and check if any of the books they have recorded mentions anything on the subject. And if I think I don't have sufficient stuff on it yet, I'll go in-game and I'll basically, for example, if I do a video on Whiterun, I will pretty much know that the wiki won't have everything on Whiterun, because I will have to go to the game and I'll basically have to talk to all the NPCs, because the wikis will have a summary and the sources that they will cite will not be all the sources available. So I will have to go into the game to check everything out about Whiterun. But if I were to, for example, make a video about Yokuda, I can be pretty certain that, because it's such an obscure subject that interests a lot of people, that if you take both wiki pages and take the sources both wiki pages cite, because again, I try not to look at the articles, but I try to look at the sources for the articles, so the interpretation can be fully my own, that I can be pretty sure that they have found all the sources that there are on Yokuda. And I always check the Imperial Library to see if there are more books on it, but I can be pretty sure that in those kind of topics where there aren't many references and people want to know as much as possible about it, that they are pretty spot on in terms of the sources they use. So generally, I've been accused sometimes of wiki copying, which really isn't the case, because I try not to touch them, because I know that that the interpretation of the writer is in the articles. But when you examine similar sources, because that's what you'll end up doing since the Elder Scrolls universe is limited to what Bethesda has written, then you're bound to arrive at some similar conclusions. And it's why also like we said at the beginning of this podcast, like why I sometimes get accused of copying Fudge Muppet, and Fudge Muppet sometimes get accused of copying me, because you're bound to arrive at some similar lore within a limited universe like the Elder Scrolls universe.
So to summarize all that, essentially what you're saying to me is that if a topic interests you, that's what you'll delve into. At the same time, you'll also be scrolling through what people suggest, but you can't do them all because that's absolute insanity.
So I try to find a balance between fanservice, things that don't really interest me, but I still want to know, and things that I see, whoa, those are weird, that really interests me, I want to do that now. I try to find a balance between those two.
Right. Then when it comes to actual research, you go to UESP, you go to the Elder Scrolls Wikia, and then, if needed, you also delve into this.
Or any other game. I mean, it's Morrowind, Oblivion, etc. They also have, Morrowind even has more in it than Skyrim. So I have to go to the different games.
Right. So you will go into the games in order to.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I made it sound like I usually satisfy myself with wiki sources, but trust me, for like 70% of my videos, I had to go in-game to do something, to check out something, because I did not trust the wiki sources to be enough. And I did not trust the books on Imperial Library to tell everything. So I went to the games and checked out dialogue. That happens more than I made it come across, because a lot of times I am in the games.
That in and of itself is an admirable approach to doing the research, because where else does all the info come from? The games, obviously, barring what Kirkbride posts up, but we're not going to touch that. That's a little crazy. We're not going to touch Kirkbride. Sorry, Mr. Kirkbride. Once you have all your research, is that where you start doing your script writing, or what's the process there, if I may ask?
Well, it really depends per video. For example, let's take a video like the video on the Mythic Dawn. I had to go into game for that a couple of times. For the video on the Mythic Dawn, what I could do was I started with the wiki sources I had, and from that I was able to compile a pretty coherent story. I basically, if you start at the first reference that the wiki gives, it's usually also the beginning of the story because it's simply in that order. So with that, with the sources I had, if I went through them in order, I could pretty much write a script on itself without much problem at all. I mean, those kind of videos take like maybe a total of, from beginning to end, 10 hours to make, from deciding I will do that subject to I will upload it. And so that's basically, I can write a coherent script during the research for that. I don't really have to make notes for that. If you take a video like the political situation on Tamriel right now, which is basically was uploaded 1 or 2 weeks before it, I believe. Those kind of videos, they do take a very, very long time to make because I have to take every province separately. So usually I'll just have a document on my laptop and I'll basically have all the, that's really stupid because I write my notes that I find on the situations. I wrote them in Dutch and I wanted to have them checked out by someone, but the guy was Brazilian. So it was a problem with that because he couldn't read my notes. But I usually then make notes, and then after I have collected enough information for myself to feel satisfied with it, so I'm pretty sure that I won't find any more relevant information on the subject, or I am pretty confident that I have found coherent information that checks out with the other information that we have, then I'll just start writing the script from my notes. So it really depends per video. With a simple subject, that's pretty straightforward, I'll just, with the sources I have while examining it, I'll write a pseudo script and I'll just adjust it later. And with more expansive videos with that require way more researching, that require researching across games and basically matching up different pieces of evidence. With that, I make research notes, and from my research notes, I compile a script. If that answers your question.
That does. And I should have realized that, yes, of course, depending on the topic, the process may need to change, especially if it's something that's very in-depth, like the political situation. Or let me ask you about, say, something that's a little more, like the more esoteric videos, like physics, right? Physics, you said you had to go and collaborate.
A friend that I still knew from high school. I don't do a university course, so I won't meet any physicians or physics professors on my course. Now, with those kind of videos, I have like 3 classes of videos. I have really short-term projects. Those are the ones that are basically finished in 10 hours, like the really straightforward, simple subjects like the Mythic Dawn, video on Red Eagle, the Lost Legends of Archmage Golder, the Red Year. Red Year was a little bit harder because I had to collect different pieces of evidence from different places and I had to cross-match some things with data. But with those kind of straightforward subjects, generally 10 to 15 hours per video is a solid assumption what I'll be working on it. But then I also have the medium to projects, which are basically the things like my Great War remake video, for example, because it took a lot of editing time. My video on who the Thalmor leader was, because I had to research so much things and piece together a lot of things. And then you have things like the genetics, which was also such a project. Those are the medium projects. And then I have the really long-term projects. And those are things like the physics. Those are also things like the one we talked about, I think, either just before or just after the beginning of this podcast. The one with the wrong title about the Second Great War. Those kind of things, those are really long-term projects, because the thing on the Second Great War, I had some people look at it who actually knew a bit more about military strategy than I did. And that's why they take a lot longer, because every step along the way I want to have verified by people who know about it more than I do. And also that physics video was same story. Because I had to work with someone who I knew, it basically took way longer. So like the medium projects I mentioned earlier, I think maximum of a week I'll be working on it, and then I'll not be working on it constantly, but spread out. And then the long-term projects, they can take up to, I think, half a month, maybe a month. And I also have the really long-term, still running projects, which are not active projects. For example, a video on the imperial government in the Mead dynasty, I still want to make, so the most recent dynasty. But that one, I have a book here. I can't completely reach it, but it's basically a completely blank book, which contains all my long-term projects. And this is one of them, where I basically write inside the book. I write everything that I find on it. And when I find something, I write it there. So when I feel like I have found enough while casually researching, when I just feel like it, then I might just one day make a video of it, or it just remains my research notes forever. Those are like the really long-term projects, and there's a lot in there which will probably never come out because there's simply not enough information on it.
Right. But at the same time, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. A lot of stuff. Not only are you doing your research, but if the topic calls for it, right, you're willing to go to people that are much more qualified than you and defer to their experience in order to make sure that things still work out the way you want them to. So using your example for talking to folks who know more about military strategy and such, that to me tells a lot about the amount of quality.
You know, I feel like if you do a video, you either don't do it. Well, okay, let's put it this differently. If you're doing a video on an original subject, so something like genetics, something like physics, something like the population on Tamriel, or the one on the military strategy speculation. If you're doing such an original subject, then do it right. If you want to do it, don't half-ass it. And that's why I also don't want to do certain projects, because I know that I won't be able to do it right. If, for example, a video on the Mythic Dawn, not much can go wrong with that. But for example, the video on physics, I only included a small part of our research simply because it wasn't everything that we did, which I still want to do something on. But I want to make sure if I do it, it's going to be something that's at least people can trust is right, and not something, not something with doubtful calculation or anything. Because if it turns out to be wrong, then I feel like people that would be interested in it would lose interest, because they were like, every time I watch something like this, it doesn't work out, or it's just wrong. So I feel like that if you do such an original subject, do it right. That's basically what I think. And I don't really mind waiting a bit longer if that means that at least I'll be sure that what I'm saying is correct. I mean, the physics in the Elder Scrolls universe, once me and my old classmate finished that script, we actually had our old high school physics teacher actually take a look at it just for fun, because we still we're still in contact with the guy. It was one of my favorite teachers from high school, but just to make sure that we didn't make any mistakes. And so it was double checked that at least all our calculations were right. And I really think that's important when you do something like that. Even if the video won't get more than 3,900 views, I mean, if you do it right. That's basically my message for it. I'm sorry for keeping the mic for so long once again.
It's fine. I think that it's definitely a philosophy to live by. Moving right along, you've talked about it before, and I'm in your own videos, but for the sake of this episode, we'll talk about it here. Elder Scrolls 6. Everyone went a little nuts over when they saw the teaser trailer. I get if you can even call it a teaser trailer. What would you like to see in Elder Scrolls 6?
Boats. I think it's in Hammerfell, and I think that the Abyssinian Sea, it would be amazing if you had like an Street 4 Black Flag, like such a mechanic you had where you could just sail in your own boat and just fight with other boats. It would be amazing if they added something like that in the Abyssinian Sea, like in Hunding Bay and Hughes Bay and those kind of places, where you could just sail around Hammerfell with your own ship and combating pirates. Even if it's just not relevant to the story, it would be amazing if you were able to do that. That's really number one on my wish list, probably.
Okay, so a naval concept to the okay, all right. I think that's.
But it probably won't work in the engine, and it seems like they want to use an upgraded version of the current engine, and that would be not that great, I think.
I read about that. Obviously, Bethesda's not known for its graphics, and their bugs are always funny to look at in video compilations. But I don't know. At some point, they have to be able to put that engine down.
Yeah, exactly. But on the other hand, if they manage to give the base version of the engine such an upgrade that it's actually stable, if that's possible, I would be all for it. But I mean, I don't really know what to think about it. On one hand, like, please upgrade the engine, but on the other hand, would it still have the Elder Scrolls feel if it's not in that engine?
Okay, you're right. I see what you're saying. Would it be Elder Scrolls without the engine, with that engine? And I would argue that yes, as long as they don't take it completely completely left field. Like if they don't end up going with some sort of anime chibi feel, then they're okay. As long as they can still make it congruent. If they were to go with Witcher graphics, right, I think they'd be okay. Because in the end, the graphics is like more and more a larger percentage of games within every video game. Either way, they know how to make Elder Scrolls distinctive. So if they can make that distinctive without graphics, then I think let me rephrase that. They can make a game with Witcher style graphics. And if they still included the hallmarks of Elder Scrolls, an open world, side quests upon side quests upon side quests, then they can still have an Elder Scrolls game with it.
Sure. I mean, I'm not saying they shouldn't upgrade. I definitely think that they should upgrade. But I think that part of their fear for upgrading is that it might not feel like Elder Scrolls. And I partly have that fear too, that if they upgrade to another engine, that while it would be a great game, it just wouldn't feel the same as playing Skyrim, Morrowind, or Oblivion, or even the Fallout games that Bethesda or Obsidian has made within their engine. I mean,
I like it how you included Obsidian there.
Yeah, I am so careful. I am so careful. Fallout New Vegas fanboys. No, but I mean, that those games have a certain feeling to it, and I think that part of the community is really in love with the feeling that you get from their open world engine, and I think that they're really afraid to lose that, and that's why they wouldn't really want to try new things with the little bit that they're a little bit scared that they'll lose that. But I think that if, as you said, they make a good engine, add everything to it that the Elder Scrolls is all about, and upgrade graphics a bit, they can still make a very good game. And I think that might be better than when it's in their current engine. But even if it's in their current engine, if it's good, well upgraded well enough, I think it could still make for a phenomenal game. But it just would be a shame if they kept to this engine if they can't upgrade it any further. That's just my opinion.
Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and draw this episode to a close. There are many more things that we can talk about, but I'm afraid time's a waste. And so, as always, with every episode, we usually end it with a 10-item questionnaire. That's very general, but at the same time, it gives us a sort of insight to see how your mind ticks. 10-item questionnaire, and then we can finally call it a day. Are you ready?
Sure thing.
Number 1. What is your favorite word?
Ad revenue. Sorry, I just had to throw that in.
No, okay. That's the best answer I've received to that question so far. Number 2. What is your least favorite word?
I'm tempted to go with demonetization, but I'm not gonna do that. My least favorite word. Canon. Because people keep bugging over what's canon and what's not canon, and I'm a bit done with the discussion. I have my own definition, and if you don't like that, I mean, I try to keep my definition out of the games. I only cover in the games themselves, or at least what's in the mainline games. But there's such a big of a discussion, and I really get a headache from that. So let's just choose that for my least favorite word.
Number 3. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Something really obscure. For example, like when people request the thing on the genetics or or like the septim coins themselves. I mean, who thinks of that? Like those kind of obscure, really detail-like requests. Those are the things that really get me going the most with. Like that's something that when I see it and I'm at university and I see that request in the comments coming in, and I'm already in university, I just completely lost track of the entire lecture, and I'm immediately want to do a preliminary research online to see if I can find anything on it, because then I want to know it myself.
Okay. Number 4. What turns you off?
Just general hate comments, like people who say whenever they watch a video, not even just on their my video, people's videos, and this is not generally about YouTube, it's also about social media in general or people in general, when they just say, whenever I for example say something, that they just say you're a dumbass without even considering my arguments, or without even telling their own arguments, just saying that they disagree and just walking away. And I'm sure I can agree with you to disagree on the subject, but if you're like that and just saying, well, you're a dumbass, and just walk away without even hearing my arguments or me hearing your arguments, I think that's something that really turns me off from wanting to have a conversation with someone, at least. And that's the first thing that came up in my head.
There's no civil discussion anymore. Anyway, number 5. What is your favorite curse word?
It's probably still fucking, like, this is fucking stupid, like something like that, because that's something I use the most. I don't, seriously, I whenever I'm in Dutch, I almost never swear, but whenever I go over to English, I just become this weird redneck, like, fucking you. So, I don't know. It's I almost never swear in Dutch, and I only do it in English, and fucking is like the thing I use most, just fuck in general. So I think that.
Number 6. What sound or noise do you like to hear?
I think silence. Don't ask me why. Simply because there's always sound around you, and when there's a moment of silence, I can really appreciate that sometimes. Because whenever I'm on my PC, and I'm on my PC a lot because it's basically my workstation at this point with the channel, there's always something beeping or something new. So whenever I put down the headset and my PC is turned off, so I have like 3 enormous fans in the thing. So if your next question is what sound do you dislike the most, those fans in my PC.
That's exactly the next question.
Those are very loud, and I absolutely hate them, but they're required because otherwise my PC will burn to death.
Okay.
And I can't afford water cooling, because then I would have to upgrade my entire case.
Right.
Yeah, that's why whenever it's completely silent in my room, I can really enjoy that. That's something I enjoy. I'm weird, okay? Let me be.
Okay, then skipping over number 7. Number 8. What profession, other than your own, would you like to attempt?
Ambassador. Seems really fun. I think you can make up for my video that I'm really into politics, and I think that being an ambassador is very interesting. I don't know, just being a politician, it can be interesting, but you get a lot of hate, and you can't really do any useful things, because usually people are just shouting at you that you're doing something wrong. While I think that being an ambassador, you can really do something useful. Like, for example, if you were the ambassador to like North Korea, you could help with a good ambassador can really make the difference in, like, if things get resolved, if things get resolved peacefully, or if things get resolved with sticks. So I think that would be something I would really be interested in trying one day when I'm skilled enough.
Number 9. What profession would you not like to do ever in a million years? They couldn't pay you enough to do it.
I would never want to be a rapper. Not really. At least not in Dutch. The English ones are pretty good, but I really hate Dutch rap, and I really wouldn't want to be one of those people that. I don't know. I'm gonna completely alienate my entire Dutch fandom, but I really, really hate rappers. So I really wouldn't want to do it myself.
Number 10. If heaven exists, if it does, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I'm really tempted to make a joke now. I wanted to say, well, man, you did good. You were right. The Altmerry Dominion was weaker than the Empire. Thanks for enlightening the people. I would wish him to say that, but he's probably not going to say that. What would I want God to say? I don't know. I really don't know. What would I want? Appreciation. I don't know. I think that I'm still too young to really have something, to have done something in my life where I would want that kind of appreciation for. If such appreciation exists. I mean, there are people who doubt the existence of any kind of creator. There are people who really live by it. And if a creator like that exists, so if God or whatever people want to call him, if God exists, then I don't really think that I've done anything in my life yet where I would want that kind of praise, like from the creator of all of us, that I would want him to say anything nice about me. As someone who has 20,000 followers on Elder Scrolls lore, that sounds so braggy. It's so bad. If I, for example, go to someone who has 0 followers and who basically started the channel because of me, as the person who inspired him, so who sort of created his channel. I mean, just it's a very bad analogy, and it's not going for this thing. But I wouldn't want praise yet, as that small channel from someone who inspired me or basically created my drive to make that channel, before I did something that's really worth talking about. I mean, my videos are fine, I suppose, and a lot of people enjoy them, but it isn't really something I would want that kind of praise for from the creator, to say so, like from the origin of everything. And I'm sorry, I was really going into this, well, this time on the podcast, you're not going to offend everybody. And then in the last few minutes, I probably offended so many people.
Here's the thing. People are always going to get offended by something or another. You just, no matter what, you can't please them all. If anything, we will try to do what we can.
Yeah, true. I mean, I shouldn't care too much about people's opinions, but still, I tend not to really put my channel is more about lore than it is about me. Find any personal information about me on the channel, except for some really broad things and some things in like the update videos. Because I think that while it's a really stupid thing to think, but with all the current polarization going on in terms of politics and in terms of religion or whatever, there is so much for everybody to basically shout about in people's comments. But within my channel and within my following, I know a lot of people from the people that follow me. Well, a lot. I think I know about 100 people personally that follow me, and only a very select few of them I regularly talk to, of course. But there are people between those people, also within the people that I personally met and that I can now call my friends, that basically I met through this channel, who I would never have met if I wouldn't have had this channel. We disagree on so many issues, social issues, on whatever, everything you can think of. I disagree with some people. It differs per people, of course. But the fact that we have this one thing that we apparently both find interesting enough to talk about, and that's Elder Scrolls, means that we don't have to talk. We can just agree to disagree on all the other things. We can just talk about Elder Scrolls. We don't have to talk about anything else, or we don't have to talk about our politics. We can talk about gaming in general. And that's something that I love about my channel, that such a diverse audience watches. And I think that if I were to put a lot of myself in the video, so if I were to go, well, you can compare this and this to the current, I don't know, presidential campaign in Uzbekistan or something like that, just to say something, to make a weird example. I think that would go, that would eventually no longer go up, that people would also start polarizing in my chat. While right now, the only thing we can polarize about is about if you support the Empire or the Stormcloaks or the Thalmor or anything. And it's just a temporary distraction from all the people that basically disagree with each other. I have seen people in my comments have very, very in-depth discussions and also make friends for like, I don't know if I've it saved on my phone, but there was like one guy who commented something under, I believe it was my video on High Elf perspectives, who basically made a very good point. And before I could react, somebody else had reacted to it. And basically at one point they had a string of like 40 comments. They had a complete conversation. And they added each other on ESO to continue the conversation and to play together on ESO. And those are people, and I don't know who they are. I don't know if they would disagree or agree on anything, but I mean, Elder Scrolls brought them together. Elder Scrolls brought them together. And I mean, you can agree to disagree on everything. Still, you can just be friends with people on this subject. And that's what I really like about being so. I try to be relatively uninvolved with my own channel. Just have it be about Elder Scrolls and Elder Scrolls only. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the original question. Probably not.
No, it answers it. It answers it. You answered it, and then we went on a tangent, but that's okay. That's okay. I think that's a great tangent to actually end the episode on, is that your channel is about Elder Scrolls and nothing else. So, Zork, I appreciate you so much for coming out and having a conversation with me.
No problem at all. This was entirely my pleasure. Sorry. Trying to read something, but it was entirely my pleasure. Sorry.
We're going to go ahead and bring this episode to a close. Dear listeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode. It's not the same old. It was something a bit new, but that's okay. We got to experiment every once in a while. I sincerely hoped you enjoyed this episode nevertheless. And as always, I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.